Hey Marcus, hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Good, good. We're finally making it happen. So we've been toying with the idea of starting a series of conversations about topics that we both hold close to our heart and the hope that we can add value to the world. So I'm really excited to start this with you.
Likewise. I see too many changes in the world, and some of them aren't for the better. It would be nice to encourage change for the better in the world. Um, and as we
Awesome.
discussed
Yeah.
recently,
So today we decided to talk about role segregation in organizations or even businesses. And I know we were talking about it the other day, how world's becoming too specialized. So to get even one task done, it gets split into multiple uh, parts. And sometimes you'd hope that the sum of the parts would be a whole, but it's not. It's a lot of chaos and commotion and heartache.
true.
So I guess over to you, Marcus. Let's get started.
I guess the concern is that in business, you contact an organization, and to exaggerate a little bit, you end up, someone answers the phone, they can't actually deal with the software, so they've got someone sitting over their shoulder typing in whatever they need to, and everything gets broken down so far that the wheels fall off, because, as you know, with Chinese whispers, by the time you get to the end of the 10th person, the message is completely different. I appreciate it. I appreciate in the business that there's more accountability if we make the role smaller, because it's then very defined, but it also makes the end users experience not that good. You ring in your big telco nowadays and they can't deal with anything because they're not authorized to do stuff anymore. Where, given not that long ago, you were able to ring someone, they were able to deal something from the initial inquiry through to completion or actioning of the request. So it'd be nice to fix that somehow.
I know. And, I often joke about it. It's almost like you need project management of every aspect of your life nowadays. So as you know, my background has been managing projects, and I always used to be I was called the glue, right? The person on the top. Um, you had all the parts that were working in their own specialization, but I would bring it together. So for the stakeholder, I was that one port of call. But that's exactly what we are missing nowadays. So for example, going to even your GP, it's almost like you have to project manage your own health, because you've got a doctor you get referred to for your, let's say, ailment with the stomach, another one for heart, but it's one body. The doctors look at it as a specialization, but it's one body. So that holistic approach, I think, we're missing. And I guess the question is, how do we balance it? Because yes, I understand, you understand that we do need that specialization. We understand the deeper you get into a certain subject, the more knowledgeable you are. And yet the connection is broken. That link is broken. So we need something on the top to glue it together.
Also empowering people to do their job better.
If
they know the whole aspect of their job, that helps as well. As you mentioned, the medical side of things, if the stomach's not working, it can affect the skin and so on and so forth. So, but yet we go to whatever stomach people are, or we go to a dermatologist, and yet they should really be working together.
Yeah. So let's say it was, an idealistic world, right? Utopia. There were no restrictions. And in that kind of a world, if someone was to say, Marcus, how are you going to fix this problem? What would you say?
That's a good question. I guess in my business, I've gone from having very segregated roles to giving people the power to do everything themselves, and holding them accountable for that from inception through to the finalization of it. So I'd encourage people to go more that way.
Yeah. And you're right, because I've seen that in my life, in my experience as a corporate leader. it's again something that I bring into the training and the coaching that I do now of leaders. How do you make people accountable, but not by reading out the roles and responsibilities to them, but make them accountable by getting them invested in the outcome? And I feel that if everyone in the organization is invested in the outcome, adding value to the customer, then somehow the alignment will happen. And like you said, empowering the employees, empowering the team members to work for the outcome. And I think that's what's missing. We're so focused on our role that we forget that actually whatever we're doing it for an outcome. And the outcome should generally be linked to the value that it is bringing to the customer. Because without the customer, a business won't exist. Whether we're talking about for-profit, not-for-profit, social enterprise, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, there's a customer at the end of the chain, and that's who we are existing for.
Yeah, that's a bit lacking in society at the moment. I think it used to be very customer-focused. Any business you rang, I remember in the days when they used to talk about how quickly companies answered phones. Now, in my industry, I'm on the phone for 3/4 of an hour to an hour to talk to anyone. It's just not the way it used to be.
True. And here's the other aspect, right? So, I mean, I always say, I'm happy to see a lot of organizations are moving to employee first, right? And that employee first, when it's linked to value for the customer, I think for me, I see that to be the win-win situation. And by that, what I mean is employee first, let's look after the employees. By looking after it doesn't mean that you spoil them. By looking after it means you create a good environment, what I call an empowering environment, where the employees are mature enough to understand that they exist as part of the organization, and the organization exists to serve the customer. So when that link is created, the employees are then always focused on where are we adding value. And with good leadership in an empowering environment, the leader is there to support, the leader is there to help you grow, and the leader is there to help you create the skills if you're lacking so that you can continue adding value. And I think when we combine ability with accountability, it becomes an environment where people want to live, want to grow, want to thrive. And then there's a net win-win for everyone.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you had environments like that, would it then take care of this lack of role segregation? Because is it really the is it really the role segregation that is the problem, or is it the lack of accountability or the lack of understanding of that link with the value for customer? Is that what is missing?
I guess from a business perspective, we're always trying to protect our business from changes as well. And if you've got a very small cog versus a very big cog, the big cog makes a lot more creates a lot more disruption in your business, where a little cog doesn't. So if we segregate any role into smaller parts, if one person leaves, then the business doesn't suffer as much. So I do understand that aspect of it. But if we're empowering people, as you said, to have a customer focus and enjoy their work, that shouldn't be an issue to start with.
Yeah. And I guess that leads to another question, right? So how far is too far? At what point does it become, does that employee first become, it's only all about the employees and forget the rest of the world? And I think a lot of the traditional leaders are worried about that kind of situation, and that's a risk for them.
I guess the world is going that way with most things, though, where everything's being broken down. And you look at roads nowadays as just an example. They used to be car friendly. Nowadays they put massive curves everywhere, so it's no longer a car friendly place. But the roads are there for cars, yet we're making it unfriendly. if companies didn't have customers, the employees wouldn't have a job. So we're losing a little bit of focus on the primary or the distilled focus of what we're doing in business.
Yeah.
Yes, it's nice to look after the employees, but if we've got no end users, the employees haven't got a job. So it needs to be a little, the focus needs to change a little bit.
Yeah. And I guess it's what we're saying is it's the balance, right?
Yes.
And the balance is created also through the monitoring and the tracking, so that there's that continual improvement loop happening. And I think that's where a leader's job comes in, because that's what leaders should be focused on. Are we tracking and monitoring adequately so that we're growing in the right direction, so we don't go too far on any end of the balance? So we're not so customer focused that we forget about the employees, and we are not so employee focused that we forget about the customer. So really what we need is a good tracking and monitoring mechanism, in addition to that maturity of leadership, where leaders realize that that's their job.
Yes.
Excellent. That's an interesting thought, I think. And I really would like to invite comment from people, either as comments or emails to you. And I am very curious to hear what others have to say about it, and see where this conversation goes.
It's always good to open up to discussions about relevant topics in business and hear other people's perspectives.
And also collecting ideas, right? I'm curious to hear what are people battling with? What are the thoughts that are going on that they would like to have a discussion on? And let's see where these the series of chats goes. Very excited, Markus. Thank you for coming up with the idea to start something like this.
No problem. Glad I could help.
Excellent. See you next time.